So we're starting when you take the pictures. Anyways, with us now today we have Sheila Colaco Rodriguez from Portugal, who is also an activist in the Extinction Rebellion movement and was active in the movement against lithium mining, which will be the topic of today's conversation. So my name is Aleksandar Matković. I come from Serbia, from this organization, Eco Societal Action, which is organizing these international workshops with the idea to establish some sort of network between organizations against lithium extraction, and we're going to be signing the Jadar Declaration here in Serbia, which we'll be talking about later on. That should kind of help establish this network, and I hope this would be kind of like a good international thing. And lastly, we have this Ramon Blacazar from Chile, and you work at this Plurinational Observatory, which is engaged with Andean salt flats, and you were also active, I think, also in Bolivia and in Chile against lithium activism, lithium extractivism, and you're writing your PhD on this very topic, I guess. So, I mean, instead of me introducing you guys, I'm just gonna let you talk a little bit about yourselves, because the idea was here to kind of, as I told you, to present ourselves. Just how did you go into this activism, into these struggles against lithium? Why did you do it? And kind of how that impacted your work. And so maybe, Sheila, we could start with you, to give us an overview of the situation in Portugal and how kind of you fit into that. So, okay.
So, my experience and my way here in the lithium, anti-lithium mining movement started in 2018. I was starting to organize myself mainly in feminism before, and here comes this map of my country, Portugal. And this map was regarding the projects, either prospection or exploration of lithium and other minerals. And when I looked at the map, my country looked like a Swiss cheese,
Swiss cheese, okay.
Yes, it looked like it was bombarded everywhere. Huge craters were in this map. And when I looked at even closer, I looked at a specific area of the country which is called Gerês. I live there, by the way, now. I just moved. Okay. And this area, I saw some craters surrounding it, too close to this area. This area has more than 60% of the biodiversity of the country, and for me, it's like a second home. Is where I have this deep connection with nature. So in 2018, when I looked at this tragedy of map, I thought it's impossible. I can't allow this to happen, and so close to Gerês. And so close to this area, so I didn't even knew at this time what was the area exactly. I didn't know the area, never went there whatsoever. Which is the Barroso region, which is neighboring this natural park that I'm talking about, and this area called Gerês. It would take a long time to actually get there. So from 2018, I would say to the beginning of the pandemics, I was mainly focused on XR. So on a broader sense, I was working for a transition, a systemic and structural transition regarding our life and, human life. And I was trying to integrate this anti-extractivist and degrowth, we could say agenda, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Inside the collective, because XR is kind of a very large international movement, and it's not focused on one theme. It's very broad, and so we tried, me and other few activists, by the way, very few in the beginning, try to bring this topic inside of our own organization. Mainly because one of our demands is to stop biodiversity loss. We are not mainly focused on the emissions, because we know that emissions, unfortunately, it's a tough topic, because many times emissions are not counted in the same way. For example, in the IPCC report, it's not in the same way as methane, for example, is not accounted, etc. So for us, the main focus was stop the biodiversity loss, because that is the only way we can have a degrowth society. We can have actual change, and we can fight capitalism, because capitalism at this time is reorganizing itself.
So
So at this time, I was doing this internal struggle and trying to reach the local movements, because it's not easy to, from one day to the other, just meet the local movements. And there are many in Portugal, because on the contrary of Serbia, you guys have, your situation is one big company in one country versus one country. For us, it's many projects in 14 districts, and it's... a fourth of the country is actually being given to mega mining, either for prospection or for exploration of lithium.
That's what I was actually wanted to comment upon a little bit. So, unlike Serbia, where we had this, one mining company, one country, kind of like a conflict, in Portugal, it was the complete opposite.
Exactly.
So, from what you told me before, you had like a lot of companies, mining companies.
We have, unfortunately.
And like, we have others here in Serbia as well, but Rio Tinto was the main. And you also have a lot of different movements. And so what I want to ask you is basically how strong is Extinction Rebellion in Portugal? Is it like, you have like tens of thousands of people that you have in the streets, you make a revolution, or like 20?
No, we wish, and we had a tough time also in the pandemics, like many other collectives, and I would say the majority of collectives suffered a lot during the pandemics. I would say before the pandemics, we did big actions, especially in Lisbon.
This was in 2019, by the way?
No, regarding 2019, it was when the local movements arrived to Lisbon, got a bit of articulation between them, especially in the north of the country, and they came and they started to come to Lisbon. And they did at least 2 major protests, but this was all before the pandemics. For XR, we were doing big actions, I would say, before the
it was cool.
Yes, the pandemics, and I would say right now we are in a bit of a restructuring time, and we're also like focusing more on trainings and on getting back to the work, to the civil disobedience and civil resistance, and working more towards the local movements. I would say at this point, this is where we are, and also rebuilding after the pandemics, because it was very tough for us to continue working and organizing.
So the pandemic kind of like struck your movement in a bad way, yeah?
I would say so. In many movements, actually, all over the collectives in Lisbon, it's where I was organized, and I can talk a bit more about that. But I would say it's a national issue. But I would say also at this time there was a restructuring of the collective itself, because we had this great conflict even inside of XR. We had one collective that was inside of XR that is not anymore, and this collective is mainly and almost only focused on fossil fuels.
Yeah.
And
maybe we could touch this a little bit later, because I'm going to ask you this, how disbanded these collectives are. But before that, I just wanted to ask you how many of you are there? So I mean, 20, 30, 50.
It depends.
It
depends. I would say the core. It's at least 3 cities working: Guimarães, Porto, and Lisboa, and it fluctuates a bit the amount of people. But the core people, I would say, well, it depends. It depends. If you do an action, you can get a lot of people. But for reunions, sometimes nationally, 10, 15, depends. Depends. This is more like the core, the people that keep on the boat, afloat. But also, I think XR always, and even in other countries, we understand that not everybody is meant to do all kinds of organization. There are people that are better in organizing in reunions. Then you have the musicians that come when there is a protest. Then you have, so
10,
we,
15 and,
yeah.
I mean, but what I hear from other organizations, this is the standard number. I mean, also here, different organizations in Serbia that kind of put out tens of thousands of people on the streets.
Exactly.
In the end, when you ask them, okay, how many of you are there? It's 10. or even less, like 7. So anyways, like I want to return later on to this question of Lisbon and the difference between cities, but it's like maybe like to give the word a little bit to Ramon, so we can, you know, enter into
the
this
compañero.
to a compañero, so we can make a dynamic. And basically, maybe I would like you, Ramon, just to like introduce yourself and like basically all the same questions that I had for Chile, so to just like not to, you know, exclude you and like to get into the conversation. I mean, we can talk a lot, like there's a lot to uncover.
Yes.
So maybe if you couldn't just like jumpstart like the Chilean case and your own activism.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I belong to the Plurinational Observatory of Andean Salt Flats, and this today we are a network actually, because it's something that we've been asking ourselves. We started as a collective. It was called Colectivo Chañar, which is a plant, like a sort of like a small tree. Well, it depends. Can be bigger, but it's a tree that basically grows in the desert and can grow in the salty ground, and it has like spikes, and it's a sort of like colonizer of the desert and allows the growth of other plants. It's an amazing plant, and it's very resistant and also beautiful. It flowers like several times a year in the middle of this you know, like this kind of landscapes. So we kind of like said, oh, look, we are like chañares, you know. And also chañares reproduce not only by seeds, but also they can like, through the roots, they can also like create new plants. So sometimes when you see like, you think it's a forest or a small forest, but it's not a forest, it's a network.
Yeah,
you know?
Okay. So it's
So
like a plant.
it's very, So, but then we started to actually extend this network to Argentina and then to Bolivia, like traveling. Sometimes it was me who crossed the Andes by bus and met other people, so other activists, and kind of realized that there were like several people, organizations, and communities sometimes like kind of like sharing the same position about what's lithium extractivism. So that's how like OPSAL, the observatory, kind of like was born.
This Plurinational Observatory we mentioned.
Yeah, plurinational not only because it's like transnational, but also because we talk about plurinationality, because within the countries there are different nations, like
I see.
indigenous
So that's
nations.
why.
So that's why it's so important.
And you wanted to include indigenous people, and by the very title. Of
Actually, like the collective was born by the initiative of indigenous activists.
It's very important. How did that happen?
Because actually it was the time when I just moved to this town, San Pedro de Atacama, because I wasn't born there. I come originally from like the center of Chile. I grew up also in the Andes, like in the countryside.
Yeah.
But but I wasn't born there. I decided to move there and to live like a quiet life. And kind of like
good idea. Like how did that go?
The countryside, the desert with this magical landscapes, find peace.
And here comes the mine.
You found lithium. So.
Yeah, and I created this NGO, Fundación Tantí, which means seed in indigenous language. And at the same time that the collective was born, so it was like in parallel.
And this was in this town, in the Atacama
In
Desert.
San Pedro de Atacama.
How is it called?
San Pedro.
San Pedro.
It's like San
Atacama.
Peter.
Yeah.
Actually, people like joke about it and call it just San Peter.
Okay.
Or San Petersburgo.
Okay. Yeah, with the Russian. So it's like located in the Atacama Desert.
San Pedro de Atacama, but Atacama is big. It's very big. It's like huge. The whole Atacama Desert, it has like probably 1,000 kilometers long, because it actually, it's also like part of the south of Peru, and it starts in Copiapó anyway. So that's how it was born. Then I joined kind of, and then we started like to study more the problem of mining and lithium. It has never been like of my interest actually before. I specialized more in let's say so-called sustainable development and agroecology, especially like alternative economics. And I was like kind of like doing a lot of projects, reforestation, recycling of water, recycling of plastic, recycling of everything, working with the children in the school and stuff. And then in parallel, I started to study more of this situation. And actually, that's how I also decided to do my PhD, because it kind of got so complex to understand and to get and to explain. And also I kind of saw that from outside, when it was explained from outside, there was always something missing.
You realized you need to do a PhD in order to understand this, basically.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
And also to make a contribution to knowledge from the ground, because most of especially academic knowledge comes from above, and specialists or people who've always been in universities and only visit the place for conducting some interviews or doing some participatory observation and stuff, so I kind of realized social scientists can get it at some point. I also saw the knowledge was also super divided into what's the chemicals, the chemistry of lithium, or the extraction, the process, all the social aspects, but it was always kind of isolated, and you never really saw the voices of people, or especially of voices of critical, social activists or social actors in general, not necessarily activists. And so that's how actually then I kind of joined also the Just to Life Not to Mining network. I'm a regional contact person in Latin America for this network. And it's been really interesting also to connect actually with other territories facing this kind of extractivism. With Portugal, for example, we've been having meetings for already I think 2 years. So that's how I met people from Serbia, from Portugal, from Spain. I've also met people from Nevada Desert, from Quebec, in Canada,
So you met even people from Serbia in this Life Not Mining network. And this Plurinational Observatory, it's also part of this Just Life Not Mining. So what's the relation?
I connect both.
So the one is not part of the other, but just you are yourself part of both. If I got it right.
Yeah, exactly.
You are the bridge.
You are the bridge between.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, the universe.
Yeah, and now actually the network is growing also in Latin America. Actually, there is another network that's been working for I think also almost 2 years, but it's centered on the energy issue.
I see.
So it's the network is the energy and popular power, and it gathers several organizations, especially in the southern cone, but now it's extending to Latin America and to Mexico. So it's very interesting because it's also connecting unions, for example, in the energy sector, also in the water management sector, public sector, countries like Uruguay, for example, academics, activists, indigenous activists from Argentina. So the discussion is a little bit wider in this network. It's more about how we think the transition from justice, energy justice, mobility justice, environmental and climate justice.
Yeah. By the way, I'm sorry that I'm just interviewing you right now. The idea was also for me to, just I wanted to talk a little bit about the Serbian case, because and also feel free to interrupt me, because this is not the idea to just have this TV style or whatever talk when you can tell us how interesting your life is, please, in 3 sentences if you can. So anyways, it was interesting for me since this anti-lithium protest started in Serbia in 2021. I mean, the company itself has been here since 1997, so it's quite a long way. They've been doing research for 20 years. But the thing is, I was that's why I kind of find our conversation interesting. And this comparison, the perspective. So we didn't know about it, and at least in the media, there's no reports on Chile and Serbia. And even when I speak with people in Germany, they didn't kind of hear about the protests in Serbia, although they were quite massive. And I think they were kind of unique in the sense that, what you said also about this, having one company in one country, opposing each other. So it was interesting for me before we hit the record button. So I think, basically, the first protest started in, I think, Chile in 2018, and anti-lithium protests. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. And like then they were like protests in 2019 in Portugal against lithium, and then in 2021, like in Serbia. So it's like you can see some like sort of pattern here,
Yes.
and it's interesting that like all three countries are kind of peripheral countries. So I mean, I want to ask, like, even before you joined this network, so did you have any idea of like the Serbian case, and when you did hear about like the Serbian case, like how do you view it basically? I mean, I know Chile that you kind of like view it as this like, oh my god, this is like a role model, like we should be like that. So I'm quite interested, like how does that look from your perspective, basically?
From my perspective.
Yeah.
So actually, I started talking with you guys first through XR Serbia in January, when we started to create this other collective called Minas No, No to Mines, basically. It's what it means. And I took a bit the responsibility to be the bridge, like my compañero here.
Okay.
And mainly because when I looked at your protests, what I saw was the union of a people. I didn't see like banners or flags from this collective, from this specific party. I saw, even if it was,
like that, but
I know, but even if it was, I believe this is very difficult to achieve, because I'm organized for many years in the movement, and I know how difficult it is for us to create at least this idea of to be united against one great enemy. And so when I looked at the size and the union, you could feel in the pictures that there was no segmentarization, like you were saying. There was not this image of separation between the collectives, and you could see the Serbian people. At least that was the way we could see it in the images. And so I got very, very interested in this, and I started talking to my own collective, but in Serbia, saying, well, are you guys in it? Are you
mean
not?
the Extinction Rebellion
Serbia,
collective.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I took on this responsibility of saying, well, okay, XR Portugal, I can do this. I can talk to XR Serbia, and we can do open meetings. So if more people want to join, they are more than welcome. But I truly believe that in the also with things that I learned with the Zapatista movement, because I was also involved in the
Zapatistas.
in the Zapatista Gira por la Vida, which
by the
was
way, maybe for people in Serbia who kind of don't know what the Zapatistas are, can you just like one sentence,
to explain Zapatismo?
Okay, I mean, like lefties know what they are, but
well, basically they are an indigenous group that rebelled in 1994. They were already before that. They were 11 years working in the shadows, let's say. But in 1994 they rebelled, and this constituted a great hope for the whole world when they appear, because the context, the international context was the wall just fell down. Imperialism has whatever won everything, and here comes these rebellious indigenous people from Mexico saying no, it's not over. It's not over. And so they also, the way they do politics for me is very important. It's very heart centered. It's very very heart centered and centered in happy rebellion, in connection with the earth. They are not afraid to say Mother Earth. They are not afraid to say it, and still be very much leftist and radical on their approach. So actually they did this voyage through Europe to understand our struggles and to share ideas and share our pains, share our experiences, and also share happiness and party between each other. And also in this feeling, I said, okay, I think the movement in Portugal needs to talk to Serbia exactly because of this, because I want to understand, and we have to understand, how do you create this sense of unity, of union, and how do we work on this? So I started.
You were inspired by the Zapatistas, and then you looked to Serbia as an example of this, kind of.
It's more like, let's apply this technique to Portugal. Let's find our natural allies. Let's find people that are already struggling with the same pains that we are, because our local communities must be like your local communities. It's rural areas. Their lives have been devalued for a long time. Every work that is connected to the land and to living in a certain way, in a non-capitalistic or less capitalistic way, is devalued. And all of these, so the attack of capitalism all over the world is to indigenous or original communities and rural communities. This is the reality, because this is where the resources are. And these people in Serbia, in Portugal, in Chile, they are actually the guardians of what is left of biodiversity or rural areas. They are fundamental. So for me, the important thing was, okay, how can we share? How can we learn with each other? And also, if this is an international attack on our lands and on a certain way of living, then we must also organize. If they are organized, we must be organized. We must talk with each other. We must build trust. We must build, solidarity and mutual aid. All those things we preach. We must do them. Praxis is very important. We must try to find it. So I start before talking with XR Serbia, trying to understand the situation, trying to understand how was the organization connected or not, because I could feel there were many different kinds of collectives, of groups. How did you achieve this? How can you make this? Because
was it complicated?
Yes, because in Portugal it is, and you know how it's difficult to get people all on the same page, and so. After this, I discovered the Marzadrin campaign, and the story goes on. That's what I want
to ask, because when you told me here basically that you were contacting guys in Serbia, so did you mean the Extinction Rebellion, Marš Sladrine?
First, XR Serbia, and then when I start talking more and more with one companion in specific one in XR Serbia, the questions I was making, she said, well, maybe you should talk to yes, and so I started talking, and it was amazing because I discovered beautiful people that are in the same struggle, that believe the same thing as I do, and that really want the world to change. And it's not going to be with lithium batteries that happens.
By the way, coming to also this capitalism issue that you mentioned, of course, So, I mean, it's interesting for me that, we're usually coming from the left. I mean, obviously focusing on social movements and struggles. And, there's also this, I think, kind of a crucial question of how lithium capital is developing in the world. And I think it's kind of developing really fast. So, although the mineral has been researched, at least in Serbia, I don't know how long has it been researched in,
For a long time. For a long time.
So you had exploration previously.
Not exploration, prospection, we call it, yes. And it was way before the projects were known in 2018, for example. In this region of Barroso, they were already in the early 2000s there. And if we go back a long time, we understand that it was still during the dictatorship
of Salazar.
Of Salazar, that these geologists,
who was also fascist guy. So,
yes, exactly. It was fascist dictatorship.
I mean, I'm gonna
we're in the same
because I mean so
situation, compañero.
Because Pinochet also has this there's this company in Chile that I heard of. It's called, I think, Sociedad Química y Minera. So it's
SQM.
So I mean, and it's run actually by a nephew of Pinochet, the dictator.
No, it's the former son-in-law, actually.
Former son-in-law.
Yeah.
So you have a family collection.
Yeah, and he's the third richest person of the country today. And actually, the price of the company has increased significantly, especially during the pandemic, and of course with the expansion of the EV market. So he's becoming richer and richer thanks to these contracts, because he got the contracts during the dictatorship
for lithium mining,
for lithium
exploration.
It used to be actually a state-owned company, SQM. It wasn't private. It was privatized during the dictatorship and given actually to this person.
Okay. So Pinochet actually was involved in giving this company to lithium prospective, basically.
Yeah. So actually, this is a connection that I try to show all the time, the connection of lithium with fascism. I didn't know about the connection.
It wasn't only about it wasn't only about lithium in Portugal. It was minerals all together, and it was these many geologists came in waves, I would say, but it started in the fascism and still in the dictatorship, and like a great compañero of the National Indigenous Congress of Mexico says, there is no innocent prospection.
Yes.
Once they know what is underneath your feet, they will come.
Mm-hmm.
And they will come, maybe not in 10 years, in 20, but they will come.
Yes.
And we have to have this understanding that we can't fight this fight for this year, for the next year. This is the fight for our lives, and it's going to continue. So you have to, this is a tough one. When you understand this, this is a really tough one to swallow. But at the same time, bring it on. It's the fight for our lives, and it's the fight for not like everything to be destroyed for 10, 15 more years of capitalism. Because this whole thing that this whole reorganizing of capitalism is purely speculative. Many amounts of huge amounts of money are being made in this moment in the markets, because the markets don't know what is going to be this big solution that doesn't exist. If it's going to be hydrogen, if it's going to be lithium, nuclear, they don't know. So the money is being made by speculating. So actually, there is not much lithium, for example, to be exploited in some areas in Portugal, but money is already being made by the selling and reselling of licenses of future explorations. So we have to be very attentive at this time, because all these narratives, they come with a price, and they come with the sponsors, international sponsors, and they come with it's the capitalism reorganizing itself. So for me, it's fundamental to defend nature and defend these local communities, either if they are rural or either if they are indigenous. Because it's all the same, that's what I believe. Land and humanity belongs to the land, and not the contrary. And
but
like international sponsors, like who? What? Like
GIZ.
I'm going to get
GIZ from Germany.
I'm going.
Please elaborate. You want to...
EV industry. The EV industry directly is directly financing international agencies, NGOs. There is a lot of greenwashing now.
Exactly.
A lot of big NGOs.
And that's a big topic,
Are financed by the EV industry. Today, for example, and actually you were talking about the protests. I'd say that protests happened, and it was like a milestone. But at some point, the protests disappeared as well. The protest against lithium in Chile. It was only like a very specific time in which there were like an open conflict between this big company and a group of indigenous communities.
Which big company?
SQM.
Oh, that was SQM. I see. And look,
but it's not the only company operating in the salt flat.
Mm-hmm.
In the salt flat, actually, there is Rio Tinto because they control Minera Escondida. It's a huge copper project along with BHP.
Yeah, and sorry for people who are not from Serbia, like Rio Tinto was also active in Serbia.
That's fine.
And in Chile, it was in 2018, this protest.
Yeah, 2018, but against this company, but there's never been protest against the other companies. No, for example, there's never been a protest against copper mines. The copper mines existed. Only a process in which the BHP Rio Tinto run project wanted to extract water from some area. So there was like a protest and they stopped that project, but they kept extracting water from other areas. You know what I mean? And now they moved to the coast. So now they are desalinization. They're doing this desalinization process and provoking more impacts on the coast.
In order to extract lithium, right?
Copper. Because they need water for copper. So the problem with lithium was with that company in particular, which is the biggest one. There is another one with which there's never been like an open conflict, because it's the first company actually that kind of like decided to give part of the income to a group of communities.
So buying the community.
So they kind of
So that's why it's also so interesting what happened in Serbia. But I think it's also because of the number of people, maybe because people are like living in the territories and kind of like having their own modes of living, and they have their own local economies. But in the desert, especially in these areas where the state is not there, where there is like a lack of access to healthcare, to potable water, sometimes to electricity, transportation, etc. It's kind of like easier for companies to go
To
and
prey on people. Yeah.
yeah, because they know what people need, and they have the solution that the state will never give them.
Yeah.
I see.
You
So
know?
basically, it's kind of like this neoliberal matrix. The state kind of like destroys everything, this like public healthcare,
Yes.
and then you have the lithium mining and copper mining companies
yeah.
coming and like
Yeah.
giving this, and
Yeah.
suddenly it's okay.
So there was this conflict with this company, and actually there was a whole like process, like a legal process and so on. But the company actually won the case and kept like operating and expanding. And after that, like in order like to get like the social license, let's say, from this group of communities, not all the people, of course, it's a group of communities which have like the representation of the indigenous peoples in this territory. They actually decided also to give part of the income to among these communities, as the other company did before.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like how lithium is operating today in Atacama Salt Flat, and that's why you don't see protests anymore. So the movements against lithium mining it's like against mining or against extractivism itself are small. It's not like the big groups.
So because kind of people are bribed in a way, conditioned by these companies.
It can be,
And it's actually
in a certain way, maybe. I'm sure that some people are bribed.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Directly.
I don't know who. Or I cannot
In
prove
Portugal,
who.
yes.
Yeah.
And that happens almost with every conflict in the world with local communities. They will like bribe people.
Yeah.
They will not necessarily bribe, but they will negotiate with communities or local organizations.
The representative of the
they
the
choose-
representatives. Historically, it's this what they do to get the social license to operate.
Yes.
And they use also lawyers who specialize in this kind of issues. So it's the kind of lawyers that approach the communities or local organizations because they know how to deal with companies and they get good deals at the end of the day, because they know how to take money from the companies. It's their expertise. And then you have also like the big NGOs or sometimes not so big NGOs that also like operate between corporations and local communities because they know people, they know the leadership, they know the territories.
And I think, sorry to interrupt. I think we can't blame the people that don't have, access to water, to healthcare, to be deceived in this way. Even though they are also robbing the future generations of a survival. Even though because I think this is really central, right? Even though they are indigenous communities, this choice is robbing. Yes, it will affect their own community and their own communities, like in a very deep way.
So they don't have any alternative to, they just accept this in a way. They don't have access to water, and somebody says like, yes, I'm.
There is an Argentinian academic that gave like a sort of like workshop on social, environmental, and climate justice. A couple of weeks ago in Mexico, and she called it it's like. Disonancia cognitiva de la necesidad.
Cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance of necessity.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it happens, and it will happen even more because actually, I'm not. Sometimes, I have hope, but I'm also my kind of like assessment, what I see, what I'm living, what I'm seeing, basically, is that, as you say, like. Capitalism is adapting all the time, It's something that many intellectuals already said, So I don't think that capitalism or extractivism is gonna get to the end by itself, because of the crisis. The crisis will will be the end of capitalism whatsoever. No, by the contrary, it gets more and more complex and more tricky and harder to follow and harder to understand and harder to fight. Actually. What happens today? It's also it has to do with the crisis. The more the people are vulnerable, the more actually they are willing to accept these kind of conditions given by the corporations. Because now we have the urgency. And actually, in Europe or in rich countries of Europe, not all Europe, a lot of activists, some very famous, fight for the future. For example, but in Latin America or maybe also in Serbia, people fight for the present.
Yes.
you're not even thinking of the future. And a journalist, a friend, was in the Salt Flats in Argentina a couple of months ago, and I met her in Mexico City last week, actually. And we were talking about this, and she said, like, so I spoke to this woman who's an indigenous leader, and against all, like, the essentialist, perspectives that dominate sometimes some networks and speeches. She said, like, and when I spoke to her, she said, like, I have to, like, care for my people and myself today. So I want these companies to give us money because they're operating in our territory, and we deserve a compensation, and I need to care for my people today.
And,
So you can also understand that, and it's part of the problem. It's not that we need to blame them. It's just to understand how complex and how vulnerable people are today.
Because their autonomy was also taken away, and their whole way of life. Once again, I say this regarding indigenous communities or rural communities. Their way of life is being devalued for a long time, and their sense of autonomy and real autonomy has been taken out. So it's so sad, and it's actually evil that these communities that were completely autonomous not so long ago are having the necessity of money, and they are real necessities, as you say.
Of course, they need
exactly.
to buy food. They need
So
to
this is
pay for transportation. And today, with the
pure
climate
evil.
crisis, actually, we're trying to solve a climate crisis. And this, and we actually, who are in the other side of the chain, of the chain of accumulation, of the chain of colonization, actually. What are the emissions of a country like Chile? It's like less than 0%,
Exactly.
0.1% of the global emissions. But how vulnerable we are to climate change. We are one of the most vulnerable countries in the world. And if you go within the country, the territories that are most vulnerable
are the
indigenous territories in the Andes, because they are in the desert, in the mountains. So now we have, like, only climate change also affecting and making people even more vulnerable, and they're supposed to sacrifice themselves in the name of a so-called energy transition, that
really
it's being dictated from the countries that are responsible for the crisis.
And it's kind of like, would you say that, this self-organization of people would kind of like help solve this, in a sense that if you would help, like, we have something in Yugoslavia that's called samodoprinos, which means like, we still have it in some forms today, which means like self-contribution, like of your own municipality, for example, which is basically, your money getting, into projects like of your own choice. If you would like get your own like healthcare and stuff like that, then you wouldn't need to depend on these companies. But the state kind of like made that impossible for people, indigenous people in Chile, and local people all over the world. And then you kind of like need, have these companies coming in, and then like SQM is basically doing this stuff.
Actually,
right?
Well, I didn't say it, but my PhD is in rural development. I'm also an agricultural technician. My master's is also in international studies.
This is what you do.
And sustainable agricultural development. So I'm very like connected to rurality, and also what you mentioned actually makes sense to me. What I saw in Serbia, what I saw in Portugal, what I saw in San Pedro Atacama is this rurality being sacrificed in the name of like this urban imaginary of the future, the techno-fixing.
No, just to say that it's the rural areas that are paying the price for a certain way of living, a urban, liberal
mode of living,
the monoculture of the cities. And the problem is the people that are organized many times in the environmental movements in the cities, they have no contact whatsoever to this reality. They don't know where their food comes. They never saw a fountain, in the wild.
Or they just patronize also like the community.
Exactly.
They think that you need to kind of like tell them what to do.
Exactly. You have this in Portugal, like academics going to small villages and telling them, for example, no, you have to do biological agriculture, and you have like a farmer saying, well, I don't know quite well what is recycling, but I always give my food to my pigs in the end. So they know perfectly what they are doing. For example, in Portugal, in the north of the country, these communities that are being affected, they lived in what we call communitarism, which is a communal way of living, and the land management is communal. It's not private. And
is
so
it a legal category?
Yes, it's called baldio, this kind of land.
It's called what?
Baldio.
Baldio.
Baldio, yes.
Okay.
This kind of land is called baldio. It's a very secular system that was actually worked with in the time of the monarchy. Actually, it comes from the time of the monarchy.
Ejidos in Mexico after
Yes,
the Mexican
something-
Revolution. They created ejidos.
Ejidos or what?
Ejidos.
Ejidos.
Yeah, it's a system of like a land
similar.
management, which is like also communal. You cannot sell it, and
it's
it comes from the Mexican Revolution, basically. Yeah.
Yes.
In our case, it's completely assemblyary because we have to understand that these communities, they were so isolated that the state didn't matter in the sense of, we have a writer in Portugal, Miguel Torga, that used to say, we would care more if the doctor would come than if in Lisbon it would be the difference between the monarchy or Republican dictatorship, because that was the most important thing for them. So they had their own assemblyary system in which, in some villages, for example, one house, one family, for example, one vote, and so everything is voted. It's very beautiful, and it's being destroyed for centuries. At least for the last century, is being destroyed. First with the First Republic, then with the dictatorship a lot the construction of dams, because the system understands that they have to destroy the bonds between people and the land for the big business to enter. This is fundamental. They understand that if the community is not once again united, the business they can enter.
Yeah.
And that's how they get the social license. They put people against each other, and so I believe this communitarism thing that is almost dying
Is
at
this
this
like
time.
something pre-capitalist, or is it some?
Yeah, you could say
This
so,
like
because
ejidos and boiu, or like
Baldio.
Baldio.
For
Yeah.
example, in the south, this law of the Baldio is national, but people lost connection to the land in the south. So in the south, you believe that Baldio belongs to no one. But if you go to these places, Baldio belongs to everybody. And everybody has a say in it.
Yeah.
And actually, the last three governments tried to change this law of the Baldio.
And to delete it completely, like
To
reform it
yes,
a bit.
yes, a bit. But sometimes I'm even, and they have this on their program, but they never actually
I
went
see.
for
They
it.
don't, yeah, so they don't have
Because I believe that is the time we will.
they will actually rise up.
This is the time we will rise up. I think
actually-
if they
yeah,
try,
yeah.
if they try to do that, because at least in the north they will. Because
I mean,
this is older than than
it's
our
good that you mentioned it.
democracy and
Yeah,
everything.
it's good that you mentioned it because I wanted to ask, like, do you have like, did you see any forms of this, like, how you say, self-organizing as an alternative somewhere? And then you mentioned all like these baldios and ejidos, you know, but these belong to some, you know, old times, and they're like a remnant of something that it could have been if it was allowed to flourish. And I mean, coming from a post-Yugoslav perspective,
Yes.
obviously I'm interested in this because we had self-management. I
Yes.
mean, with all its pros and cons, you know, it's like, I know even that Marx, towards the end of his life, even looked to Russia and some forms of communal ownership, and like, I mean, okay, so you answered that there is no such thing as, you know, the attempts to self-organize in this economic sense,
Yes,
I mean, so to speak.
And many times it is for example, the representatives of the Baldio. Normally, there's one person that is only like it's rotative, the thing, and normally it is also the people that are on the Baldios that can facilitate or not the entering of the mining companies, for example.
Interesting.
Yes, for example, in the Barroso region, there is this wonderful farmer lady that actually went to try to be the president of the Baldio of her village, and she won. And this is very important because before, when a company had a project, for example, that they wanted to bring to the Baldio, they would make this reunion, this assembly, and it would be like only 2 or 3 people, sometimes old people.
Okay,
So it was dying. This process was dying.
Yeah.
And
if you're
nowadays,
in your 20s, you don't see it as a viable alternative, you know?
Exactly.
So it's dying off.
And now with this woman, she she made her, her election about the anti-mining agenda. Actually, she won. Everybody said she wouldn't win because she was a woman in this very patriarchal, rural area, and she won. And now she has like 90% of the people of the village in the reunions. And of course, when a company comes and says, "Well, this is the project for your village,"
then
they don't have to.
Fuck you.
Exactly. You don't have to deal only with 4 people. You have to deal with the whole village. And if the whole village says no, then you have to go to the next village, to the next baldio, and do the same. So it's another way to fight, a very important way to fight also, because they are taking the revenue is also communal. So you can take things out of the forests that are baldio or the lands that are baldio, and of course you are going to take out the everything that people have to do their living if you take away the baldio. So people understand very fast that the mine can't come.
And is there any like connection between villages? So is there like a baldio of baldios, or like is there?
What do you mean?
For example, like I'm just like making like being whatever. So
like an articulation.
So they're like individual villages, but are they connected in some hard structure?
Yes and no, because we also have to take account that these villages, they have secular rivalry, so sometimes no.
I see.
But for example, in my area, yes, they are starting to do this. They are starting to articulate all the region.
So different villages can become like one body.
Exactly, and so they can also protect themselves, try to...
but this is a rare occasion, it's not
yes,
common.
Yes, it's not
thing.
common.
I see.
It's quite recent, this thing.
So there's some activity on self-organizing in this manner. Okay. And in Chile, like, is there something similar with these ejidos?
Yeah, I think that the ejidos are in Mexico. I mentioned that because I'm doing my PhD in Mexico, and have some fellow students and activists who work or belong to ejidos actually. But in Chile, actually, when you mentioned about the pre-capitalistic organization, I don't know if you've read the Carlos Taibo and the Anarquistas de Ultramar. Like the ultramar is like overseas, overseas anarchists. So kind of like to understand like these modes of living that are self-sustaining, that have this kind of like relation with earth, with other communities and the authorities or the non-authorities and so on. So I think that actually it's super, I don't know, from my perspective, we don't have like white or black. It's always gray, with different tones of gray. It's not as if people lived in that system like 500 years ago. People sometimes, you have the families that work in the mines, but at the same time, they manage the water, for example, with the community. But that water, and there are some interesting papers, for example, Anita Carrasco is an anthropologist who wrote a paper about how one indigenous community in Chile treated water as a sacred being for their rituals, but they could also like sell water.
I see. So this mix of pre-capitalist and very capitalist.
Exactly, and the contradictions are part of humanity. So they shouldn't surprise us.
Of course.
But for some reason we tend to whether to essentialize or romanticize sometimes. So we are always disappointed because we will always see that people are not the way we want them to be.
That's why I ask, because people usually also on the left think that this is some kind of like safe space from capitalism where it does not function.
I don't think that
and then the ideal is the community. And but it just doesn't look.
And actually, I'm conducting my research with this group of farmers, indigenous farmers, and they go, for example, to work in the mingas, which is the collective work. It's unpaid, of course, it's voluntary. Actually, I've been there many times. So for sowing, for all the activities in the fields, but they go with in a 4x4 because during the week. They work in the copper mines, for example.
I see.
So it's part of reality, and I think that living there and like being an activist there, and not like seeing it from above or from far away, kind of like taught me that sometimes it's not the way we want it to be. So I prefer to act and to do my research and activism, kind of like accepting these contradictions.
Of course.
And I see so many organizations, NGOs, the government itself, also like consulting companies, sometimes paid by the mines themselves. Everyone is coming to the territories to tell people what to do, what not to do, you know? And sometimes we think that rural or indigenous communities are inherently ecologists. And they are in some way, but in some other way they are not, or they can be, but they are not necessarily that way.
It's not in their just like being.
It's not in their essence or in their DNA.
Be.
Like I don't believe in DNA or the blood or things like that. I think that we all I believe in social structures. I believe in relations of power. I believe that we all belong to Earth, you know, and we are all called to defend Earth.
Yes.
But there's no difference, you know, and in that sense. Actually, when I told you about how our movement started, how our network was created, some indigenous activists today actually changed their minds. They are not necessarily like against mining anymore. Now they think, oh, you know, we can't really fight mining, so we're going to deal with them. And it's part of the reality. It's very hard to accept. So I think it's important to understand this, because when you, for example, in Serbia, want to fight mining, especially lithium mining, because lithium is different to other minerals, because lithium is the only mineral that is supposed to be responsible, green and all that shit, you know? Other minerals are accepted as dirty minerals.
And only this one is like...
Nobody wants responsible gold or responsible diamonds, you know? But lithium needs to be clean, like for all guilt. And this actually is being like pushing actually back to the agencies and the EV industry, actually to build new kind of networks and forms of relations to get to the territories and to kind of like create their own, like what they call the governance regimes, you know? So this is what will probably happen in Serbia after the first stage, because as you say, you know, it's not, as Sheila said, it's not like only today. This is a struggle for forever.
Forever. Like Once they know it's there, they will come.
And that's why you're here to warn us, basically.
Yes.
Because
I tell you.
I'm listening to this and like said, yes, this is what we need to hear.
Because they will come back with a better proposal.
With another company, with another name.
They will realize, actually, I'm being called by IRMA, like the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance. I've been called by GIZ, like the German agency, by different NGOs. They want to talk to you. They want to ask you for contacts. They want a meeting.
Yes.
They want to convince you, you know, how good their initiatives are and how much you can change things from inside.
Yes,
you know, and it's the same that they do with the communities.
Exactly.
But the difference is that I cannot negotiate anything because I'm not like a right holder. But communities are, so they will go to the communities. They will
go for the communities to get a social license.
With a huge,
they will prey on the communities.
Proposal, and they will give them like, okay, so they will hire a sociologist, an anthropologist, and say, like, oh, these people, what's their cultural origin? What are their values? What are their issues, their problems, their needs? And they will come with this answer. Say, oh, the Serbian government is not giving this to them. We give you this.
Exactly.
And they will divide everyone.
And so what would you say to the Serbian organizations, for example? If somebody would ask you, like, you know, 3-sentence killer, like, go.
Well,
like, you know,
I wanted to say something first, but I would say don't trust anybody that tells you that they're not going to come for it.
Because now we're in this moment that when, you know, these elections are passed, and, you know, have passed, and people are like, okay, so we said no, and like, but your experience tells us something different, something else. Your experiences tell that.
And for example, what you were saying before, in Portugal, it's a bit inverted. So actually, our government has issued a national plan for mineral exploitation in the country, and so it's 30 minerals that actually were put on this list, and lithium is actually being used. So they only talk about the lithium, but they have this plan on the back.
Other minerals.
Exactly, and for you guys, it's also not only lithium. Borio is also another. So in Portugal, what they are doing is they are using lithium as a flag, as this green transition, Green New Deal, and the European Union is actually already giving money. In the sense of they already putting funds disposable if the companies get the approval from the environmental agency. There are already funds waiting waiting for them from the European Union. So actually what the some countries of the European Union are doing is preying on Portugal, because Portugal is peripheric and it's a poor country, of course, in the context of European Union, but that's what they're doing. And so actually these many of the mines that are, when I looked at this Swiss cheese of the map, that I was telling you.
By the way, who made this map? Sorry, because you didn't.
It was the map.
Company.
Actually, no. It was a map from the like what we would say.
That's what inspired you.
No. It's from the government. It's actually
It's
from
the government.
the geological
in Chile is the
institution.
same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They
And then when
issue
you
that,
saw it, how much destruction there is, and you were like,
I was
"Fuck."
like, no, I can't allow this, and they can't call this a just transition. Look at it. If you look at it, it's very simple. You can't say you are changing the world and saving humanity and the earth and completely destroying biodiversity. Like, it's so simple when you look at it, and destroying the communities. For example, what they are doing right now, this company called Savannah Resources, which is
it's from Australia, which is right.
it's also from
Just like
Australia.
Rio Tinto.
It's connected to Rio Tinto. For example, they had a joint venture in Mozambique, and actually Savannah said we're coming out of this joint venture because we prefer to explore it in Europe.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So yeah,
Resource
they don't
security.
know what they're doing.
Yeah.
We have to understand that at this point they don't know what they're doing, because we have no real solutions to keep civilization at this level of exploitation
Yes.
of resources. It's impossible.
Yes, and even the
It
mines.
was-
What?
No, about I think that I'm sticking to the question about what we would say.
Hey, yes,
People.
please do.
It's an
Please do.
interesting question. Before I forget it, no, it's just like I don't know if you saw the documentary that I produced along with OPSAL members. We went to Salinas Grandes in Jujuy in Argentina, and there is this very strong activist. Is somebody that I really admire a lot. It's Veronica Chavez.
Veronica Chavez.
She's a leader of these Coya and Atacama communities, and she's also part of this cooperative that exploits salt in these salinas, in the salt flats. So they live out of the salt they process themselves, about self-sustainability. But when I was like interviewing her, and it's part of the video that is on YouTube actually, so it's something that anybody can see. She said something like they come and they say that is work and development, but I don't trust them. So this is something that I like, a message that I would like to trespass. She says something like, it's bread for today and hunger for tomorrow.
Yes.
And then she says something that I really felt like really like in my heart, like almost like to cry, because I was like standing with her and she was like just feeding like vicuñas, which are wild animals. Vicuñas. It's like it's the smallest camelidae. And they are wild and they are very shy, but they will approach her. I never saw that. She would give her like the rest of the vegetables, but they are not domestic at all. Actually, they are super shy. And there was like this female with the child, like the vicuña baby, let's say. And they are called huachinangos, but it's impossible to translate because it's an indigenous word. So I was like there, and we were speaking, and then she said something like, when the companies come and they dig holes in the earth, is as if they did it to my own body.
Yes, and that is the ecofeminist. Sorry,
yes.
This was
and she's not an intellectual.
She's
not an intellectual.
I'm sorry, it's not. I am a poet, and it's not poetic when we say to hurt the body of mother is to hurt my body. To hurt the body of these communities, the body of the earth, which has been exploited, like the body of women, exploited, commercialized, conquered throughout history for a long time. It's pre-capitalistic, this exploitation. Actually, it's exactly that. And I normally say, and this is very strong what I'm going to say, but normally I say, if these craters that I saw on the map, if they were made by bombs, we could surely defend ourselves. But since it's not made with bombs, it's made with men in suits shaking hands, it's like we have to accept it. Well, we don't, and we won't accept it. And just, I remember something. Regarding Savannah, what Savannah is doing, for example, now is giving what the state won't give, going back to what you said before. So, for example, they are saying that they are going to fight climate change by helping us with the forest fires. So they are going to invest in protecting these communities from fires. Or what they do, for example, and this is preying on the people.
Greenwashing, like
it's pure greenwashing.
Level 3.
Pure greenwashing. For example, they are now at this moment trying to buy land from people that are very old. Their family has immigrated because on that territory everything was taken off. There is no opportunities for life the way they want, at least, and they're giving 10 times more the value of a land. For example, if your land is worth 4,000 euros, they're giving 40,000.
Yeah, they're doing the same in Serbia.
This is preying on people, and if the state is allowing that, and not only allowing, in the case of Portugal, they are sponsoring it with the help of the European Union. This is not a transition, this is treason. This is treason to us in our time of living, but specifically to the future generations that are going to inhabit a world without any real resilient biodiversity spaces. The numbers from, for example, Oxfam in 2016, and it's not even like a very militant organization, was that 25% of the earth was being was already the biodiversity that is left. This is 2016, and from this to 25%, more or less 60 was being held by the original communities, which are the biggest minority in the world. And so this was from 2016. If we add to this the Amazonian fires, the Arctic on fire, the
Patagonia,
the current of the Gulf changing, we are on the brink. It's already here. It's already here. So I ask myself, why do I have to negotiate even with a government that is betraying its own people, betraying the sole goal of having a country is to have territorial cohesion. It's for your, and I'm not even pro-state, but this is the sole. The goal is to have a country with borders and to manage the land inside of it. So if you are giving a fourth of your country away, what are you doing? This is the biggest treason in our history, actually. And even I try to always center my speech on land and not on Portugal, because I'm not nationalist. I'm an ecofeminist. I always try to center it. But in an historical sense, this is the worst thing that happened to Portugal ever. Like,
yeah, actually, I think that, no, thank you. I think that actually what's important, it's also like to protect like I wouldn't say the alternatives, because when we speak about alternatives, it's like as if we were responsible to provide solutions to problems that are
recipes, like as if they're done.
Totally unfair. So it's more that it's to defend the modes of living, and also defend nature. And we are actually in OPSAL working in a law. Actually, we've been conducting participatory research with different territories that comprehend the area of the Andean salt flats and wetlands, because it's one kind of ecosystem. On the Chilean side, because we cannot like do it in the three countries, but of course we kind of like, we are totally connected on this. So we are now working with politicians that are with an ecofeminist, actually, deputy. She's an ecofeminist, and we are working on a project of law for rural wetlands. And I also work and belong since years already with the Free Flowing Rivers Network.
Yes.
And actually that network, through that network, is the first time that I knew about the pristine rivers in Serbia and the last pristine rivers of Europe.
Yes.
This is something that I learned through this network a long time ago. So with this network, actually, last year in December, we had this gathering, and I kind of like proposed a methodology for a participatory workshop. So out of this workshop, with organizations from all over the country, we kind of like gave like a proposal through one member of this network who's also writing the constitution. So we kind of like
Constitution of Chile.
in the the new constitution in Chile. So we kind of like got to put in the constitution like what it's called like a sort of like watershed perspective for the management of the territory. So instead of like just regions or borders, we need to see the watershed.
Exactly.
Yes,
No?
and that's what we heard. I think
It's called
And it's like
it's like
influencing like the political,
bioregionalism,
the
no?
political.
Bioregionalism, a bit, no?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
you should manage land not by borders, but by
Systems,
exactly,
living
Yes,
systems.
yes, yes.
exactly.
So we have on one hand like the constitution that is recognizing today the rights of nature, for example.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's something that I'm an advocate of the rights of nature in Chile. So we kind of like out of this recognition, plurinationality, a whole new system for the management of water with like kind of like priorities for human consumption, for wildlife and so on. We kind of like are trying to intervene in the creation of a new political system because we need to intervene there. It's not only about opposition or resistance because we cannot be resisting forever. Like it's a work forever, but it doesn't mean that we need to block roads forever. We need to block roads today, and then we need to build another system that will let people free in the future, so they don't need to be, in a constant.
We have to block roads today, and also today, other people from our same organization have to be organizing other
like-
So we
other
organize
ways.
the
Yeah.
alternatives. We kind of organize in the territories, economy, solidarity networks, and so on.
New-
Agroecology.
And
But at the-
indigenous people are going to have more rights, I think, with this
Yes.
new constitution. Yeah.
Yes, actually,
Historical reparations.
Chile, but
taken
Chile
into
will
account.
kind of like be a plurinational state as in Bolivia. So that will give them, for example, they will have like some seats in the parliament that will be reserved for indigenous peoples.
Nice.
That's one of like the main effects. There will be a recognition of like indigenous legal systems for some cases in some particular at different levels, which is totally positive because it's like, as you say, like it's historical reparation. Anyway, I'd say that this doesn't mean that everyone will be against extractivism, like automatically.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, like of course we see this. I support 100% this, but I know that
You
indigenous
don't
communities
romanticize.
probably will decide sometimes to approve projects. It happens, So I think that's also like this struggle against green capitalism, against green extractivism, ecofascism. It's everywhere and at all levels. It's not like it doesn't come with identities,
Yes,
It's not as like these people are inherently against this or that. Within communities, there are also indigenous activists that are trying to convince like the families and the community fellows to go against mining. There will be people who be for mining, same in governments, in the academia, even in the NGOs actually, and even social movements. Very critical social movements today are also like supporting the energy transition.
Exactly.
Worker unions, for example, sometimes they are not necessarily sensitive to the environmental
I would
issues.
say
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is the
and-
biggest issue we have
part
in
of the
Portugal.
left,
So
you
it's
know,
part. It's a social. It's a cultural change that it needs to be done and produced at all levels, everywhere.
It's
Yeah, yeah,
change
yeah.
on the
Yeah.
way we live. It's a change of
Exactly.
the way,
It's
the
a
way
whole
of
change,
life.
and it
We
doesn't
can't-
come with some identity or with some like job position or whatever.
Jurisdiction, like
Yeah,
of the.
no,
Of the
it's-
I mean, this is just like the old representation of the left that the workers are always progressive, blah blah.
Exactly.
I mean, I also work on workers' education, by the way. Like I research in archival research, like of Marxist centers in Yugoslavia, Marxist education of workers, and I mean, you see how many like there was a network of these Marxist centers that were like basically. You had a lot of resources to, like give to the workers in order to, just like discuss what progressive movements are and stuff like that. So it's not that just like you're born, you become a worker, and suddenly you're completely left
Exactly.
wing. It's like, no, it's stupid.
Actually,
It
in
can be
Chile,
regressive
the
as
discussion
well.
about lithium is it's quite divided. Today we understand it very well, and we can kind of like categorize the discussion. But for example, you see like more in the academia or in the big cities, it's about nationalization.
Yes, exactly.
And about
this is the position of many parties in the left in Portugal. They want the state to manage to have the monopoly of
which
the
is
destruction.
Good. I support that. I support the idea, of course.
But even Gabriel Boric, I think, wasn't this idea to create an OPEC of lithium nations producers so they can manage and distribute
I call it the monopoly of destruction. The state having the monopoly of the destruction. That's what they want.
The OPEC, it wasn't his idea. It
was an Argentinian.
He speaks more about a national company of lithium.
Something like in Mexico, something similar happened, but it was
it's always like it's same in Bolivia. Like Bolivia nationalized the so-called resources, but Bolivia is not exporting 1 gram of lithium. So we need to kind of like it's good to see these cases, because in the news, in the propaganda, you see a lot, like because of the nationalism, this resource nationalism.
Yes.
And this kind of like gives a lot of popularity to politicians, because we nationalize when I agree with that. For me, it's like sort of colonialism, neocolonialism.
It is.
Of course, we need to stop this.
It is.
But it doesn't mean that a national company will resolve the problem.
Of course.
So it's then again another
internal
discussion.
Colonialism, because it's the cities preying on the rural areas. It's internal.
Yeah. And then in the territories, again, it's not as if like the territories were in the same position. It's like the contrary, like absolute contrary. Like within the territories, you have in the case of San Pedro Atacama, for example, you have half of the population is recognized as indigenous, and half of the population is just like mixed race Chileans, regular average Chileans, plus immigrants who have no voice, that they are never asked about anything. And then within the communities, you have one part that is represented officially, and it can negotiate. Let's say.
And get the social license.
Yeah, exactly.
They can.
Exactly. And then within these communities, some people are against, some people for. And at the end of the day, the only ones who decide are those, So I think that it's so like complex. And lithium is actually showing how complex extractivism is. And it's exactly why we need to understand what my professor, Carlos Rodriguez, he speaks about like the models of dispossession,
Yes.
So it's about the accumulation by dispossession.
It's with David Harvey.
Yeah, David Harvey kind of in that line. But then you need to understand the model. It doesn't. It's okay to categorize it as a dispossession. Okay, of course. But then you don't understand. You don't know who's who. You need to understand the regulation. You need to understand the companies. You need to understand the social actors. You need to understand the relations. Otherwise, it's just you stay in the general critique, which is okay. But with general critique, it's very hard to act.
And the left is always clinging on to these models as if this is like a scheme, blah blah. But
you have to get out of the theory and going back into the practice. Left, let's go left.
Yeah. I mean, like capitalists will invent something new. It's not the end of the world. So of course they're gonna exploit this kind of basic tendency.
I wanted to comment something that you said regarding. I think it's very important regarding resistance. You said we can't be on resisting forever, and this idea for me is very important. Of course, we will resist, and there are many ways to resist. But the thing is, we have been in reaction mode for at least a century of attacks. We have an attack and we react. We have an attack, and it is not only in the lithium mining, it's all over the social movement. Either a state or a private company attacks you and you react. What I truly believe, and it goes really well with what my compañero was saying, is that we have to have our own narratives. We have to have our own agenda of how are we going to do this. 50 years, 60 years, we have to really, and it has to be very fast that we do this, because when we don't have a narrative, what happens is the European Union, all these institutions, private or state, I really don't care. What they are going to tell you is the green transition narrative. They're going to say, well, but you have a cell phone, dear. Even though they know you have to have it nowadays, and that you live in contradiction with yourself. In capitalism, this is the most, it's alienating, we know, and we live in contradiction. So we have to find a narrative that is simple and clear enough that the people are going to understand.
Communism.
And no, but truly, we need a land, and body and community-centered narrative where degrowth and many Marxists have to understand degrowth, because Marx talked about that. Not only that, for example, Engels talks about getting back to the metabolism of the earth. Why don't we talk like this to the movements?
Well, because
it's very poetic, actually.
That's gonna be like the resistance. Well, to explain myself also, of course, we will be always in resistance. What I mean is, like, you understand,
presence.
right? It's to be
Presence.
like we cannot be like with the machines
Exactly.
like
all the time
over us all the time, because sometimes that's also romanticized and it's
Exactly.
not good. Like, people deserve to live in peace, but then the resistance will be this, right? What you say,
It's
like
changing
our narratives, our change, our agenda.
Going back to nature sometimes.
Yeah.
It's going back to your community. It's being present in the moment, even though capitalism doesn't want you to live your life and to have pleasure and to live, and that this idea that life has to be earned.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to ask you, because, of course, going back to a community can be also reactionary, as you know, like from a lot of historical experiences, including Portugal. So, I mean, like, I wanted, actually, because we're approaching the end, it's almost 2 hours. I cannot imagine people just like listening and like, okay, when are these guys gonna make it, get
Where
to
are they
the
going
point?
to go next?
Yeah.
What are they proposing?
Yeah, to go to a pub or something. So, anyways, like, before we go to a pub, I mean, I wanted to be honest, to ask you about like the obstacles you yourself faced, but I'm gonna leave that for the end because it's sad, and people get like a little bit down, and then we can finish and go for a beer. But anyways, like, before, since you mentioned, Marx and degrowth, and you mentioned it 2 times, you also mentioned Harvey and this modes of governments. That's a little bit Foucault there. So, I mean, of course, what are your theoretical backgrounds? So I see you both kind of like left-wingers, like a little bit this postmodern theories like Foucault and stuff like that, but also kind of like you mentioned, like this, Marx and Engels talking about like, this ecological aspect, which I think is completely forgotten for various reasons. Like
for 100 years.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's when you said like we need a new narrative, of course, like we need to kind of like reflect on what socialism was, and like because I mean, you cannot just like neglect 200 years of like going through one like direction. And basically, I mean, I think a lot about this, of course, like also coming from the left, but also for various other reasons, because even if you're not on the left, how the fuck can you understand the world? So you need some emancipatory movement. I think we lost that because like we don't need to call it socialism. Of course, socialism, like, I mean, people in 1848, they weren't, born and like says, we're going to be socialists. Yeah, we are. So yes, let's go. We're socialists. I mean, they're basically, those are like peasants who kind of lost everything and like demanded something. So, and that's how socialism, developed. It's like, people have like these identities to buy a t-shirt with Che Guevara and like a red hat and like, I'm a socialist. So, but of course, I mean, that's not how socialism arise, then it will not arise like this. And I mean, like, I know a few people who actually worked on Marx's and Engels, ecological notebooks, and like, I mean, I translated a little bit of this stuff, and it's like completely interesting because, like, somebody mentioned here, I think this metabological rift and John Bellamy Foster, and
yes,
I mean,
the metabolism of the earth.
It's
about rhythm.
Yeah.
It's about rhythm. We are working in the social movement in the rhythm of capitalism. We are not working in the rhythm of our rhythm, which is the rhythm of the earth. We are not. We are completely separate, and this is a great.
I mean, look, once you have capitalism,
the idea of separation is one of the things that is killing us for a long time. The idea that we are separate entities, the idea that there is no interdependence, the idea that it's another narrative that is winning.
Well, it is.
The separation narrative.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to actually just like point something to this Jadar Declaration that we will be, signing. It might also be interested for you. because like when you mentioned this, like the methodological rift. So I mean, historically, from what I've read from Foster and like a little bit of I don't know if you know Kohei Saito, but we don't need to go this.
Okay.
So a Japanese author that reconstructed this Marxist development anyway. But the argument is very interesting. So once you had capitalism in the 19th century in like the agriculture, so like the produce per hectare, like it dropped. The more you invest in it, actually the land gets depleted, and you have falling profits. So like it's like a historical stuff, and like German chemists were like discussing it. This of course Justus von Liebig, so some of these names. So anyways, like do not go into that, but it's very interesting that because of this, they started to import, like Germany and like England started to import guano from like
from Chile.
yeah, and it's very interesting that like, you have ecological imperialism already there. You have globalization because like you needed like something to substitute the depleted grounds in Germany and England, and then you have kind of like the same process being repeated. I mean, Marx was aware of this, and like even wrote some notebooks on it, and it was very interesting for me that this comes again back to Chile, back to Portugal, back to all these grounds, and then we pay for the green transitions that they had
with our own taxes.
yeah, which is crazy.
Actually,
and like maybe just like one sentence when we were
thing?
no, just like very practical when we were no
Female anarchists.
no I'm done. No, I'm done with this theoretical. I just wanted to say that this when we were writing this Jadar Declaration, so I was thinking like, okay, so how the fuck do you base an argument in a fucking declaration? So human rights, no. So like what opposition to that? Okay, no, that's baseless. Like like where is your ground? So you say we are opposing like ecological imperialism because of what? So where do you ground it? And like the way we grounded it is like by saying that we belong to the environment by belonging, and so
the earth.
yes,
I say earth.
yes,
even.
yeah, and like the complete opposite of this divide, metabolical rift. So this divides the earth and the people, and like the produce and whatnot. And I mean, it's a historical process. I want to say that because it's not something that leftists are saying because they like Marx, so which people believe we are some crazy people, and
even non-Marxists are saying that.
Yeah,
actually.
and and that's why we have to oppose it in precisely this way, to oppose this division, between like this metabolic ecological rift by saying that yes, we do fucking belong to the environment, and the environment not just trees and birds and everything else, but also like society and like man-made stuff. So that's how we kind of based it in this declaration. I mean, you both read it and kind of like liked it, I hope.
Enjoyed reading it.
Yeah, and anyways, like I hope you will also sign it, because this like the idea like why we're here also is kind of we want to sign this declaration to make this network of organizations, communities, by the way. And I'm also saying this because we will be discussing this in the following days. So this is something that I will definitely readdress. But before we go back to Chile, I want to say that, and like as I said, it's very interesting that this ecological imperialism that's been done by capitalist companies in the blah blah Germany and English, then it's coming right back into our face, like, and they say pay for it, and they pay for it in Chile, pay for it in Portugal,
and make you feel guilty in the process.
And that's why I think we have to have some sort of a network, because this is really an international problem. It's just like a Serbian, Portugal, and Chilean problem. But please, sorry, how to say? I mean, we're speaking about the rift, and like I interrupted you, so I made a rift there, and please now, and please resist now.
There's so much
I
to
forgot,
talk.
and I've written so many stuff, and I started to.
Yeah, you said, you draw.
Compañero, no
I like
He's not alone.
I betrayed plants and everything.
Hey, but you're coming back to the environment, so.
Yeah. It's
and
something
non-linear
that I
and
do
creative thinking, which is.
Since I could hold a pen, I'm doing this.
Okay.
I think that for now I'd like to share something about the question about where do we ground our struggle. And I think that for me it's actually I sort of like I don't know, like I was studying in Europe.
Where were you studying, by the way?
In Paris.
In Paris.
I decided to study, like, do this master's in international studies in sustainable agricultural development. At that time I really thought that, I don't know, like it was like near the COP in Copenhagen, total failure, and then
what, the studies or?
The COP.
The
The
COP,
COP.
okay.
Well, I didn't like the
Flop.
studies.
Another
Like,
flop.
I think
The
that
COP is
I never liked the studies that I've done, except from the PhD, which is amazing. But so it was like
What a commercial.
hating the university, hating the French academia, and hating everything, and say like this is so hypocritical. And then I traveled, I backpacked to the south of Italy. Went from France, I crossed Italy, and I started like to work. Well, anyways, I grew up in the countryside, so it's not like I wasn't doing like this sort of like tourism. I come from that, you know. So I started to work in these small farms and self-managed lands and recover lands that were abandoned because they were not profitable anymore. So some like the owners gave it to organizations and collectives. So I started to like kind of like think like, wow, this is like really like we are facing like a deep crisis. It's like when I realized about the pandemic, the same feeling. I felt something in my stomach and I said like, no, this is like really serious. And no, like nothing but working to fix this makes sense.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, nothing but this.
I think a lot of people feel
Like
that.
I can't do anything else.
Me, it's a bit-
Like there's nothing else I can do. Otherwise, I would be like feeling bad every night before going to
Yeah,
sleep.
yeah.
And then and then all this happens, you know. So I worked. I initially I worked much more on like recovering agricultural practices and local food systems. And then I had another revelation. It's like, oh my god, like extractivism is destroying everything. It like the alternatives will not be alternatives
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
anymore because of extractivism.
If they don't be anti-extractivists.
Yeah. So and when I was and to finish, when I was in France, I'm gonna confess something. I didn't have money, so I stole books all the time, like systematically.
I did it.
Best kind of robbery.
I did
Me
that too. And,
I-
so we
I-
all stole books.
I systematically stole books.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say where, but it's in
Yeah,
Boulevard
yeah.
Saint Michel. Anyways,
Oh, I stole it from in Berlin a couple
Yeah,
of
yeah,
times.
yeah.
I come back to Serbia, copy them, and then go back
Historical
to
reparations,
Berlin.
I tell you.
so I started
Fuck
to
it.
read all the
That's
books
okay.
I could about degrowth.
Ah, nice.
So I was like, oh my god, like I'm in the middle of like this. This is not a country. I said like I always saw France like as an empire. So I said like this is not a country, this is an empire. I'm here. I'm reading about degrowth, and it makes sense. Like something that really makes sense to me here, standing with my feet here. And then I went to Chile, and then suddenly I started to learn and read and teach myself about extractivism. And I think that what I feel like that motivates me, it's the need to connect these two actually perspectives. Like post growth cannot come without post extractivism and vice versa.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like we cannot stop this machine if growth doesn't like stop at some point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how I like make things like have more sense. Otherwise, I will feel also that I will be just maybe fighting against like the Quixote, you know, against something that I can't really understand. But understanding this and connecting the struggles, I think that there is something that we can do. And one last thing is that in Chile, after the social outbreak, I think that in the middle of like the hopelessness, we found some hope, thanks to the social revolution, and
Yeah.
thanks to all the people who lost their eyes, unfortunately, people who were mutilated, people who were
Disappeared.
women that were raped, people disappeared again, as if it was like a short dictatorship, you know, of 2 years. We were back to dictatorship at some point. But we have another horizon, like a transformation
Yeah.
possible. And this future is being for the first time in history, in human history, actually, written with gender parity, written with indigenous peoples, you know, for the first time.
Immigrants.
And it's the first
Problems.
constitution in history that is like written and declared under climate emergency, and so many other things that maybe are in the paper.
I'm sorry. When will
So
the
fa-
constitution be constituted? Like,
It's in the
if it's
process,
approved
right?
in
Yeah,
the
it's in
referendum,
process.
the 5th of September.
So this might be a new historical date, by the way.
It will
You know,
be.
like
It will
For
be,
Chile,
and
for
will be
sure.
part of like a commando for the approval campaign.
And did you write a part of it?
No. We
You can tell us. It's okay.
we create. No, I participated.
Put the dot there.
I kind of like spoke in some commissions, like suggesting some stuff that were partially heard
Included.
because. But it's another subject. But
Okay.
anyways, the periphery of the periphery of the periphery of the periphery. That's the salt flats in Chile. Look, it's in the desert. It's super far away from the big cities. It's also seen by for many Chileans, especially people like politicians or I don't know, like people see the desert as a source of minerals and the income for the country. So that's another struggle. Not only tell people
look
that
at
lithium is
nature,
not a
yes, to
solution,
look at
not only
nature as a-
telling people that extractivism
Resources.
it's like immediate money and not but it's also telling people that Chile cannot depend on extractivism
Yes.
because that's extractivism. Extractivism is not just extraction.
So how is that connected to the constitution? So
Rights of nature.
Yes.
So we think that we can protect wetlands and salt
this
flats.
is it's trying in
It's
the
giving like
constitution.
personal.
The new water regime, the new mineral concession regime. So
all of this is the constitution.
all this is gonna change.
Yeah.
So it's then now it's up to the parliament to actually write the laws.
In New Zealand, for example, has some laws like that you stop looking at, for example, a river as a resource, and you have to look at it like it's a personal jurisdiction. It's like the river was a person, your uncle.
Yeah.
You know?
person
Yeah,
for
and,
it.
that, and
And
that's
so,
for many it's so crazy, but companies have actually a jurisdiction.
Exactly.
Companies have names.
Exactly. And if,
I know,
registration
if they are
numbers.
damaged, exactly.
Companies have
Exactly.
rights, and nature doesn't, and we are part of nature.
And,
Like
and
you
the
say,
problem
Corporate
is
personhood,
many
like-
times if the tree is up, it has no value. If it's down, it will. That's extractive.
Yeah.
It will have value once it's destroyed. A mountain has no value whatsoever. But if it's destroyed and you get to the resources inside, then it has a value. So once again, all life has been devalued.
Yeah.
All life has been the natural processes that are not profitable have been completely developed.
But for us, just to finish, it's like one of the hardest actually points was about salt flats and lithium even in the constitution.
Yeah, please tell us more.
Actually, there was like we kind of proposed some articles for the protection of the salt flats and wetlands as like a natural and cultural heritage. And it didn't pass actually because of the lack of support, because of this discussion that I told you about. It's not that easy. It's not as if even all the social movements were for the protection of salt flats. It's not as if all the environmental movements were, because for many people, sacrificing the salt flats or the any environment for lithium is something acceptable.
Exactly.
So that's the complexity also here. It's not only about what happens in the territory, it's also about what happens and what people think in the countries, because unfortunately we live in states.
Yes.
We can criticize that and maybe but we unfortunately are in this like political
Still.
system today. Yeah, right. What to do, let's say.
Still.
We depend on laws and stuff. That's why we kind of like also like in Chile, all the political movements, I think that had this turn after the social outbreak, suddenly everyone or most of people wanted to participate. People who always rejected the institutions now participated. But it's not given. It's
Coming
not,
back to lithium, by the way, sorry, how is that enshrined in the constitution? You told us that it's like a special case, and are you gonna?
We actually there were two one was an article proposed by us. It didn't pass, and then there was another article that wanted to kind of like establish that the salt flats were part of like a certain type of ecosystem that should be specially protected, and they didn't make it pass.
Of course.
They actually erased salt flats
Interesting.
because of the conflict with lithium mining and all the.
So that's the only exception to the Chilean
Because-
institution.
Yeah, and also, and there was another one, the last that I think is important and very relevant here is that there was an article also that could establish the expropriation of the private mines of lithium and copper, and that one didn't pass, and the socialists actually voted against. So that's just to say that
Interesting.
how
Our
tricky
government
this
is
is,
also a
and
socialist
how the
government.
influence of extractivism actually, how the mining corporations control also the politics in countries like ours.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little bit less in Portugal, I guess, because it's
Yes.
foreign companies.
It's different.
But in our
It's
case,
different.
it's like these big mining companies, also like the ones that produce like the woods in the south, like the ones that produce like this artificial fish, all these have like captured the state, and we are kind of like all now like putting these things the other way around, and now a lot of like social activists and environmental activists and scientists are occupying positions in the government. They are writing the constitution.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Let's see if they don't get co-opted also.
Well, you
we
know
also
what,
have to count on this.
yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, we
Sorry,
can
but
also influence
I'm
this,
also-
Yeah. No,
But you need to see, but there are people that have been like fighting till the end, and we need to recognize that.
Yes,
And it's not hard. It's not easy. It's super hard.
of course.
But again, like I think that the social outbreak, all this revolution, also changed my perspective.
Yeah.
For the first time, I kind of like accepted
Have some
that
hope.
there is hope, and that we need to occupy the institutions.
Yeah, definitely. And I think,
Yeah.
we shouldn't be talking, I mean, not me, us three, but like majority of people, especially if you come on the left and have suffered 3, 4, 5 defeats, But, like, there is this beautiful line in Marx, like, from this, how to say, the 18th Vermeer. So, the idea that basically, the defeats of the revolution still, make the system kind of like bend at least a little bit to the progressive side, because now it has to deal with you. So I mean, we have you now here who's writing like parts or influencing this new constitution. I mean, I hope that this network will actually come alive, and I mean, I just want to say that maybe in the future, who knows, people can influence stuff. I mean, it's not that like the ruling classes kind of know what the fuck they're doing. Most of the time they just don't.
No,
It's just
and
like a
it's,
rule, but it's,
automatic also the system sometimes.
I mean,
the elites, the way they work, it's also almost automated.
yeah, and see where that went, like where that took us. Like we have like crisis of everything basically. Not only the economy.
I truly believe we have to be in all places and all hands on deck right now.
I agree.
The people that are in the institutions very well.
Yeah.
For example, I can't be because I don't have the profile for it.
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
the profile for other things,
Yeah.
for art, for the streets, for etc. But I think it's good that other people are doing it, and I'm going to support them. I'm not going to stop their. I'm not going to be a force of for them not to be able to do their works institutional in the institutions.
Yeah.
So we need all hands on deck. We have no time, and we are very few doing this. So we truly need everybody at their knowing what to do.
We need to attract more
Yes.
and engage
and
more.
position
And articulate.
yourself. What can I do? What is breaking my heart? And what am I like? What is my skills? What are my skills? What am I? And then act. If you're a lawyer, you can do it. If you're a student, you can do it. If you're you can actually do it.
Like you know what? Like I mean, working like I mean, I completely agree with you, and it's like very interesting because like I mostly get like my energy, my inspiration from actually working with international people, like people who with similar problems in a completely different context, because that lets you, like that shows you like
How structural.
Yeah. There's also that and how like different it can be. So I'm working at this like the science sector for almost 10 years, and it's like there's a procedure for everything, procedure for this and that, and that basically science has become like how do you say attached to the publishing industry. It's basically just like an attachment to the publishing industry, and I constantly feel that these people kind of like you have burning ground beneath your feet, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna publish this article, and then in 10 years I will publish another, and like You know, and it's like, oh my God. So, no, and you know, like people don't like, when you tell them this, of course, they do not, how to say, see it or have any motivation. But like, you know, if you leave it be, yeah, okay. So climate change in practice and alternatives. Yeah. So basically, yeah, but like if you leave the system be, it's gonna fucking collapse if you don't act. So like,
Exactly.
yeah, and I mean, you mentioned degrowth, and I constantly have in mind also this like, I mean, also like friends and like people like Branko Milanovic. I mean, who like is kind of influential also here and abroad. Who's like, I mean, he did call degrowth magical thinking. I also think he's right, by the way. You know?
And we don't have to be afraid of this idea
But-
of magical thinking. I think
But once you look at what the economists do, like, you know, it's just like not leading anywhere. It's like,
for you to fight,
Capitalism is magical
sorry.
thinking.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
for you to fight capitalism, you will have, this is a subjective fight, war. This is the war for the imaginary also. If you don't have the imagination to dream another dream, how are you going to compete with capitalism that is trying to give you everything, that is giving you necessities for things? And even though the endemic disease of the West is depression, you know, we supposedly have everything, and we are completely empty, and we are actually sick as a whole. So I am not afraid of being poetic, non-linear, creative, because capitalism hates. You know, hates like free imagination. Capitalism hates the hope that I might have. Because if I have hope, I'm not going to be so productive. I'm not going to be focused on my survival to this day. I'm already dreaming of the future, man. You know, so this is very important that we give strength to each other in the sense of we don't have to be afraid to see life and value things in a different way. And for us to achieve that, we completely have to get out of this which is very Eurocentric, liberal in a certain sense, in this narrative that if we are very serious and credible, you know, and if we use the terms that the capitalists themselves want us to use, that we are going to change things. No, if this is going to be changed, we have to be the game changers, and we have and we have to like really, we have to have our own languages, our own narratives. We have to be proud of those. And they are going to look very, very different from this very organized and rational, very patriarchal way of life that we have right now. So yes, more magical thinking, more poetry, more resistance in a different way. Sorry.
Okay. Before we go to a pub and you know realize this magical thing.
Oh, imagine in a pub.
Imagine
drinking.
Yeah. Okay, Ramon.
We would be like till the morning. I know myself and I know you now. So we'll be like good partners in a bar. No, I just want to add something. We need to be careful with the idea that capitalism is rational. Capitalism isn't rational. We need to be careful with it. It goes rational itself.
And it's
it's like a person that thinks that is smarter than he is.
And it has that of you.
So it's just like in the microphones.
Sorry.
The pub is nearby.
Capitalism is not rational. Capitalism is not scientific.
Yeah,
it's the opposite. It's the right opposite. And actually, today with what the so-called climate crisis, which is a systemic crisis, not a climate crisis, or civilizational crisis, Enrique Leff calls it. It's actually a demonstration of it. You have the IPCC, which is science. Okay, we say
very conservative science.
Yeah, okay, of course, okay. They give the numbers. Okay, that's okay. You know. Anyways, a group of them made a public political statement. So we need to acknowledge that. But anyways, so it's science, it's numbers, it's indicators. It's okay. The solutions to that diagnosis are the problem, not the diagnosis itself. The diagnosis is scientific.
Of course.
The solutions are commercial, are not scientific.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah.
You know? So there is a gap.
The diagnosis is not to say unscientific.
The medicine.
It's not the contrary. That is also a bit of the separation narrative that if you are for science, you can't have magical thinking. No, we can do it.
Yeah,
we
of
can
course.
have both.
You
both
can-
No, you have
ways.
also this postmodern thinking, postmodern attacks on
Uh-huh.
rationality as such, which I think are bullshit because, like, I also like, if you read
think you
Horkheimer
can
and these
have
guys,
both.
it's kind of like, this idea that Western rationality.
Like everything against rationality?
No. I think
course not.
that's
It's the
we
way.
need rationality. For example, planned economy. For fuck's sake, that's like like we have a heritage of this.
Of course.
And also, I mean, coming from this post-Yugoslav perspective, we have some sort of self-management. Of course, it was like problematic on some levels. It was never completely realized in the sense that the state completely backed off. Of course, and you couldn't for various factors,
Yeah.
but like international competition. But you know, like what? Even this basic planned economy, if you would just like completely redistribute, at least do some war economy stuff, like just the states, install tools like capital controls, like pause the like how do you say, like stock exchange, just like do basic distribution. Even that would be fucking better than what the anarchism of production that we have now. And I think that lithium itself is an example where you have, I mean, it's not the reaction to climate change. And that's the thing. I mean, it's like a reaction to the fucking falling profits of the German automobile industry, for fuck's sake. And so, and it causes stuff in Chile, in Serbia, in Portugal, all of these protests, and I mean, it's got, sometimes, life is, I mean, people will hate me for this, but sometimes it's complicated, sometimes it's fucking black and white, and I think this is black and white in the sense that, you
Yes.
have this like anarchism of production and everything. And of course, what's gonna happen next? Like, in these countries, we'll have a fucking attacks. We will have the fucking lithium industry. Then the profits will fall again. Once, I mean, who the fuck will buy the fucking electronic cars? So, I mean, I can imagine us free, like in 10 years or 20 years, thinking, okay, yeah, these protests were, smart, but, like we didn't do anything. Maybe we will. I think we will. But anyways, like, I think the fucking automobile industry will not be saved by this. Not only the automobile, but like the mining
Nothing
industry.
will.
And then, and the next fucking step is that, in 10 years we'll be back to the fucking square one, resisting these guys. And that's why we need to take a fucking initiative and say, okay, people, we can have a planned economy. There are fucking models. And of course, I mean, when you say magical thinking, of course, this is going to enable more time. And you need to, also one good psychologist from Belgium, we did a play on the end of capitalism, by the way. I didn't plan on like doing this, but it's very, very, this is a very good story and I have a very good point with this, like a very good point. Anyways, so we, like I was called to do a music for this, play on the end of capitalism. And what they did, they like invited 20 leftists from all over the world to debate the end of capitalism to make the play about it. And what do you think happened? The play was cancelled.
Of course, they couldn't talk with each
they were
other.
fighting.
It was the worst 10 days of my life. It was
course.
like we were in Belgium in this beautiful Ostend, which is like a holiday resort for
Ostend,
rich people.
I lived there. I know.
Ostend.
Yes,
You lived in
when I was-
Belgium?
yes,
Okay.
when I was
Yeah.
20
Okay.
years ago.
We'll
Yeah.
we'll talk in the pub over this. So we were there, and it's this beautiful sea. You have this like hippodrome and these rich people, basically apartments. And then we're debating this end of capitalism. Not even couldn't agree on fucking one thing, and then canceling the play. I was like, okay, please bury me here in Ostend. I want to die. It's like, I didn't ever talk about this, but this guy who was a psychologist in this group was like, they invited us. In the end, he told us basically, and like we were also in a pub, and he told me like, Aleksandar, you know what? The left is fucking too cerebral. And I was like, what? It's like we're fucking too cerebral. Like
I'm dancing here.
we're also always this in these models and like
That's the
how do we?
patriarchal thing.
And
I'm sorry, that's the patriarchal
Yeah,
thing.
I mean that's why I would agree with this.
Sorry,
Like, yeah.
it is what
Yeah.
it is. It
I mean, I
is.
completely agree. We cannot just like sit in a pub and like, oh my God,
not
how?
about economics
Dude,
only.
you
Sorry.
got to move it. You got to go outside and experiment. And you have some economists. You probably it's called like Branko Horvat here in
also a
Yugoslavia.
class thing.
Yeah. It is.
Not only a gender, also a class thing.
Yeah. I mean, just want to end this with this Yugoslav thing. I mean, after the war, they actually threw the textbooks on economics. They did this. You have like a text, like like historical memoirs. Because they were, they thought like, okay, capitalism sucked. what? We don't fucking need this shit. Like, throw them away. Let's do something new. And they did, like, a lot of mistakes, a lot of bad stuff. You have, for example, winter clothes coming in the, how do you say, the summer clothes in the winter, no food, blah, blah. But you know what? After a fucking several years of experimenting during the fucking war, then you can have these like workers' councils. You have like a council of producers in the assembly. People weren't elected just by voting. Like they were elected by GDP. So if your industry has 2% GDP, you will have two votes in the parliament and stuff like that. And then they were like, okay, how do we do this in reality? We don't need textbooks. It's gonna last, and it's not gonna be perfect. We will have contradictions and stuff like that. But that's it. We need to experiment in reality. So that's what I wanted
Praxis.
to, practice. So like, maybe we don't even need to make a fucking point. Instead, just like, we need to experiment in fucking reality. And that's why you are in Serbia to sign this fucking declaration. Maybe experiment here. So
well,
that's what I want to
I didn't get involved in this by thinking.
Yeah, definitely.
With the heart, once again, Zapatistas.
It's been totally like emotional.
I'm sorry,
all the
I didn't
time.
say what
Like,
grounded me.
Hey, please do, please do,
It's
please
actually about
do, please.
it. What grounded me. It's actually very personal story that there is no separation. There is the illusion of separation, so everything is together. So I'm going to tell you, it was a deep personal, like I was living this very alienated life, like the majority of people. I was looking at the forest fires in my own city in Portugal. I was looking at Trump getting elected. All of these things were coming. The IPCC report at the time, 2018, giving us 10 years at that time to change everything. And here I was in the center of this calamity, in the center of in my own right, going through a lot of attacks that were coming in this sense at that time from the patriarchal system, and trying to do my own therapeutic, to get out of a certain state of apathy, and here comes this will to live out of nowhere.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just remembered that the camera has a battery, and so it might be dead. But let's wrap it up and go to a bar.
No, but it's just to say-
recorded?
I think we're still being recorded, but okay.
No, but just
Okay,
to
here
say,
we're recorded definitely.
But it's recorded.
So yeah. So I'm sorry.
no, it's okay.
Yeah.
Just to say that it was a deep personal voyage of how does my life make sense in a collapsing, dying world? How can I face this? My own alienation, the fact that I, at the time, hated my job, I always wanted to go to the country and be closer to nature, and I never gave this step because I was too sad, actually, to do anything about it. So how do I give meaning to my life? And once I got back, to my body, which is something that capitalism also does. It separates you from your own body. Once I started coming back to this idea of land, I have to be with the land because this makes me better. I have to be in this certain way because my body feels better. I have to go to meetings because my heart feels happy when I go and I talk about the end of capitalism, because this gives me hope. And I will go to Serbia because my heart is telling me to go to Serbia, because
Serbia gives you hope.
and also gives me hope,
Not
as
to
well
me.
as Chile gives me so much hope. The Constituyente and all.
Yeah,
This gives me so much hope,
Doesn't it?
even
Yeah,
though I
it's
am
like, wow.
critical. Even though I am
we
critical.
will celebrate the 5th of September.
I'm also critical, but what the
Of
fuck?
course,
It's like
but it's like the
we
best.
we never dreamt that something like that could happen like 3 years ago. It was like, what? When you
And-
see it
and
now,
so-
This is the
like,
future that
it's
you need to
And
build.
so what grounds me actually is the pure presence and pleasure of, one, being alive, two, fighting, being on this side of choosing a position and saying, no, yeah, this is my mission, this is where I feel comfortable, and choosing where am I going to live, in what kind of community, what are the changes that I can do so my so I can get to this metabolism of the earth, because I tell you, if you listen to the body, if you listen to the communities, if you listen to the biodiversity, there is this rhythm, there is this language, it is inside of us, and while we don't listen to it, for sure we will be sick. Sick. And that's why, like we were saying before, the psychopaths are running this business. That's why the psychopaths are running this business, and that's why we are so disempowered, because once you once you are present,
they're making us look crazy, for demanding something else, like not adhering to these crazy rules. I mean, like, no fucking wonder, like, it's like there's chaos and that people feel bad. I mean, the world doesn't make sense unless you build it. So
exactly,
I mean, this is like a socialist conclusion.
The meaning is ours.
Sorry.
There is no meaning. We give the meaning to our lives. We construct it. We construct a meaning, a collective meaning, and a personal meaning to our lives. And like my companion, the meaning of my life is to being part of this great change. That's why I was born. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. It's true from the time I say it is. I make it. I make it this way. So this is what grounds me. It's the pure sense that I have to be doing. There is nothing else I'm going to be doing but to reconnecting with myself, to my community, to the earth, to the birds. That's why I changed even like city, everything. And let
Can you please let Ramon? His eyes are like, I need,
No.
the eyes are shiny.
Okay. But it's because it's okay to build the world, but there's also this material reality. Yeah. You need to respect the material reality of the camera.
And of course I do. That's why I talk about body and earth. What is more material than that?
The lithium battery. In
It is material also.
Maybe I'm gonna share something. We're finishing, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or
we need the pub.
Yeah. Because I think the battery is going to be dead soon. If not.
Okay. No. If I think there's always just after what Sheila said, I think there is always a spiritual part of all of this. I think that all the people that are in this kind of like struggle are connected to some feelings and and emotions, regardless their like religious or non-religious beliefs. Let's say I'm not a religious person, but I think that I'm quite spiritual. Let's say.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm always like in this kind of like search of sense. But not this sense with the head, like, does it make sense or not? It's more like from here, you know what I mean? From
where exactly?
By the way,
non-linear, non-colonial, non-patriarchal. He's putting it in the body even.
Yeah,
good.
But it's not like it's not when you make decisions like this. I do this, and this. No, it's not like that.
Yeah, you go in it and do it.
You just go.
Nature doesn't work like that.
And when I, for example, decided to pass through the phase of the PhD, going to Mexico and making everything like more like, I don't know, like more specialized and dedicate 100% or 99% to this, was in the desert, was in a river, it was with mushrooms.
Presence.
Actually.
Yes.
And it was like very long journey. And after that I said like, yes, I'm going to do it.
Only when you feel you can act. Only when you feel. That's why you have so many academics. They know everything and they don't act. And then you have some activists that their heart breaks when they see the craters. My heart breaks, at least. I'm going to talk for myself. You have to connect with things and feel them in order to act, or else you're not going to act. Mm-hmm. You only what's this sentence? You only love what you know, and you're going to only defend what you love. So first you have to be with it, in the presence of it. Many times I go to these mountains. My mountains are correct. The mountains where I live are connected to the mountains that they want to destroy.
Go there. And you need to come to Atacama Desert.
Yeah. Please invite me. I will gladly go do mushrooms in the desert. So I mean, like maybe it would be a journey.
I'll take care of it.
Okay. The mushrooms.
It's a deal, eh? It's a deal.
This is a good end for this podcast.
Okay.
It is. When I say something, I do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But many times I even like talk to the my mountains are connected to these mountains that they want to destroy, and many times I even talk to them. Maybe it's crazy. I don't care. I say, please,
No, it's not.
please help me help you. How are we going to do this, mountain? Really? Like, let's work. Like, I'm of course kidding, but this is what I'm feeling when I look at it. It's like, come on.
You're not kidding.
Or when I look at the river, or when I swim in the river they want to destroy, and I almost cry because I'm drinking the water that I'm swimming in because it's so pristine, and they want to destroy it. This is the way that I'm going to motivate myself to do things next in a very different urban way. That I'm fighting, but I never have contact with the things I'm fighting for. Really? So you have to feel with the body and with other things. Maybe we call it heart. The Zapatistas would call it heart, and me too.
What do your bodies tell you at this moment?
Pub.
Let's end
And
this
the end of
podcast.
capitalism.
Yes. Okay, so bodies have voted for the pub. I think that we don't need to say anything alcohol. That's it.
Yes.
So
Consensus.
end of
consensus.
podcast.
End of the podcast.
Well,